I have 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour in this bowl. And to that, I'm going to add a half a cup of white sugar, a half a cup of loosely packed light brown sugar, a teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, and another not always used ingredient is a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then we're going to take our little whisk and combine all of that. I'm going to break up the sugar if you can. Now the nutmeg is an optional ingredient. You do want cinnamon in your apple pie because otherwise it's not going to be apple pie. And there's one more ingredient, my grandmother's secret. That secret ingredient is cornstarch. Most apple pie recipes call for just flour, but that leaves a pie that's a little too moist, a little too wet for me. It has too much water in the bottom. So we just add that to our dry ingredients. Cornstarch thickens up the juices a little bit more. If you use all cornstarch, you're going to get a filling like the thickness of a lemon pie, which really wouldn't work with apple. So what you want to do is use 2 tablespoons of flour and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Then it's wet but not thin watery. It thickens it up a bit. Now after I sliced these apples and rinsed them, I dumped them in this bowl on a paper towel to absorb some of the excess moisture. And we're still going to get, and you would believe, but I do my best to get rid of all the extra liquid. Okay, now we're going to sprinkle sugar mixture, flour sugar mixture, over the apples. That's most of it, but not all of it. Then we're going to mix them up. The goal here is to coat every piece. Then we're actually going to leave it sit a few minutes so that it does draw the moisture out of the apple. Make whatever liquid it's going to make here in the bowl, which if there's a lot of it, we leave it behind. I don't pour it into the pie. And we got a tablespoon of lemon juice to add too, and this is a good time to do that. Now we're going to let those set aside for probably 5 minutes or so. Oh look, we got counter space. This is the 3rd attempt to make an apple pie video. Last time I got it all done and discovered that the main camera, that one, had recorded for only 6 seconds. While we're standing right here, and all kinds of water. Now we're just going to put the apples in the pie. Try not to let too many of the apples be stuck together, because then they'll cook like they were one big solid piece and it'll take a long time. Then we'll end up with some hard chunks of apple in our pie, and we really don't want that. I like the apples in my pie to be soft but firm at the same time. I don't want them to be. All right, let's spread these out a little bit by hand here. I think we can get about one more scoop's worth on here. I'm going to make them as high as I can because they're still going to shrink down some, but at least I have a good amount of apple in the pie so that even when it shrinks down, it's a fairly thick pie. Got plenty of filling in it. We're going to call it good at that. The oven is up to temperature. Oh, by the way, this is how much, I can't show you, but this is how much water there is in the bottom of that bowl. And we would not want that in our pie. Now, for the final piece of the pie, we put the top crust on. This pie is going to go in a 400-degree oven for 25 minutes. At the end of that 25 minutes, without opening the oven door, we are going to reduce the temperature of the oven to 375 degrees and bake it for another 35 minutes or so, maybe a little more. We'll test it by poking it. I have some big wooden skewers that I use for basically shish kebabs, Puerto Rican shish kebabs. It's called a pincho, and it's chunks of meat that are marinated for at least a day, well, about a day, in a special sauce, and then you barbecue them, and they are incredible. What I'm doing here is rolling the edge of the top crust under the bottom crust. Try to lock them together so that the juices are sealed in and don't get all over the oven. But I do put it in a cookie sheet when it goes into the oven anyway, because chances are good it's going to overflow. Okay, now you can get really fancy with this and flute it, but I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm just going to push it down with a fork, which further binds the top and bottom crust together. With this many apples in it, it's really hard to get it nice and uniform and pretty for fluting, so I don't even bother to try. And there it is. But now, one last thing, we have to cut some vents in it. And the reason we do that is there's a whole lot of steam in this pie when it's baking, and we need to let that get out. So we cut holes in the crust all the way through the crust. Let that steam escape. But there it is. That's ready for the oven, but I do have to get a cookie sheet. What we got to do now is we're going to take one egg and we're going to add a little bit of water to it. You could add milk also. Then we're going to beat it up and then take our little paintbrush and we're going to paint everything evenly, except we don't bother to do the edge of the crust where I pushed it down with a fork, because that's going to brown anyway without any egg to help it. And we just do the whole thing before we put it in the oven, a nice thin coat, and that'll make the pie much prettier, as I'll show you when it comes out of the oven. Straight out of the oven at 375 degrees, where it has been actually for about 50 minutes. Altogether, that would make it 65 or 70 minutes. And my little skewer tells me that it feels pretty done. Those apples are still firm, but obviously I can push right down in them. So what's going to happen now is this thing sits here overnight, and then tomorrow I'll cut into it and show you what it looks like inside. Okay, the pie is cooled overnight. Let's cut into it, see what it tastes like, see what it looks like. I don't know about you, but I'm excited to see what this looks like inside. For the first piece out of an apple pie, it held together pretty well. It's surprisingly dry, but oh, it tastes good. Let me show you what it looks like. Notice how dry it is inside. There's no extra liquid in there. And of course we did have some shrinkage under the top crust. But you can see there's still a whole lot of filling in there. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you want more apple goodness, check out this video right here.